Hi everybody, it is Ken from Tall Garage, and I want to take some of your time to talk about Cleveland heads and LS heads, and why I chose LS heads when building my custom Ford 300 head. I get a lot of comments like this asking me why I didn't use Cleveland heads. So in this video, I thought I'd take some time to kind of put my thoughts down and inform you, the viewer, who may be thinking of doing this, and if you should choose the LS head or the historically used Cleveland head. All right, so we're going to break this up into a couple different categories: price, performance, and oddball stuff, at least the way I see it. I think everybody can relate to them as well. So we're going to start with price, and we're going to start with the LS head, because that's the one I know the most about. I can give you the most information. Now, there are a number of different LS heads to choose from. I chose Casting 317. They are one of the least in-demand head you can get in the used market. They have the largest chamber size, which means most guys would opt for something with smaller chambers giving them more compression ratio, which is fine by me because we're going to machine the head anyway, which will reduce the chamber size and bump up compression anyway. And if you do the math, the chamber size on the LS heads is still smaller than the stock heads, so no matter what, you're bumping up compression. But these are the heads I chose. They flow just as well as the 799 heads and the 243 heads. The only difference is the larger chambers. These heads can be gotten on the used market for between $50 and $100 per pair. Prices do fluctuate, but that is the best way to find them. Most guys take them off to put on better heads, so you can definitely get a good deal if you look. We're not going to talk about buying new cylinder heads because I don't really suggest that when it comes to LS parts. If you can find a good deal on some takeoffs, go ahead and get them. So having said that, and why I chose the 317 casting, like I said, they have the largest chambers, which is we're going to make smaller anyway. Let's move on to the Cleveland head. I don't know much more about the Cleveland heads, unfortunately, as they're not really my forte, but I did look up a couple of different heads. And I had some criteria I wanted for heads that I would buy. Now, I do not believe there were any factory aluminum heads, so that was kind of out. So we had to go aftermarket. I wanted something that was definitely affordable, if not out of my budget. I also wanted something that had flow numbers that were third-party checked, so we could look at them in the performance area. And I found an Elderbrock cylinder head. This head cost $1,200, brand new, and is readily available, which is another reason why I chose it. I didn't want to pick an older head that you couldn't find anymore. These are on jegs. So now, obviously, we're comparing a used head to a new head. You could more than likely find used heads, but they're definitely going to cost more than used LS heads. Now is kind of like the perfect time to pick up used LS parts. Now, the price tag may be a bit more for the Cleveland head, but when we look at performance, that might be justified. So, here's where we stand. You have $100-ish used LS heads, and you have somewhere around $1,200 new, plus shipping and tax, for Cleveland aluminum cylinder heads aftermarket. Now, like I said, we don't really know the used market is on these heads, or at least I don't, so I can't really tell you. But it would seem to me that if we're going to be cutting up cylinder heads, we'd much rather do it something readily available on the used market that doesn't cost a whole lot. So, choice is yours. But let's look at flow numbers, right? Because flow numbers could tell a different story. It might be worth it to pick up something that costs a bit more if it performs a bit better. So, let's go ahead and look at the Cleveland head first. So, like I said, I found flow numbers for this Cleveland head, and the part number is an Elderbrock head is 61629, and they're readily available on jegs. And we're going to look at the flow numbers real quick. Now, I personally like to look at between 600 and 500 thousandths of lift to kind of get an idea of how the head performs. So that's what we're going to do. Now, looking at this head, it flows 250 to 260 CFM at 500 and 600 thousandths of lift. That's very respectable. and that would definitely make for a heck of a lot more better breathing head than the stock Ford 300 head. So now if we look at the 317 heads, we're going to look at this chart from Caltech. On the bottom line here, we can see OEM, and that's telling us that the 317 heads, which like I said flows just as well as the 799 and 243 head, it flows 256 and 251 at 500 and 600 lift. Now this is almost identical to the Cleveland head, which is a huge uptick in price to performance. You're getting the same performance for way less money. This is great. Now again, I'm not telling you what to buy. You can make your own decision. But looking at this, it seems to me that both the price to performance ratio on the LS heads is far better than the Cleveland stuff. But let's continue, right? So, if you look at the Caltech head here, they have some flow numbers for their porting service. Their basic porting service ups the flow to about 280 for $500. And that's for basic porting. And it goes up from there. But if you did want to spend more money, you could have your LS head ported, CNC ported, and you'd get a big uptick in airflow. You could obviously do this to the Cleveland head as well, but you're going to be spending more on the head and then more money on the better performance. So the LS head, in my opinion, wins again, even for more performance. You could spend $1,000 on porting an LS pair of heads and still have less money in a head that is very superior to the Cleveland head for about the same or less price. It seems like it's very, very competitive to me. All right. So now we've looked at price to performance ratio, and I think you're the clear winner here, but I'll let you make that own decision. Now let's look at some odds and ends that I think are important too. The first thing I would like to talk about is the cam. Okay, we're going to talk about the Cleveland head first. Now the Cleveland head uses a different cam pattern as far as intake exhaust on the cam lobes than the Ford 300. So in order to get a cam for the Cleveland head, you would be getting a billet blank and having it ground to your specs. So this is immediately going to cost more money up front, which seems to be one of the big factors with the Cleveland head. Definitely more money up front. Now, something I would like to highlight with the Cleveland head is you can upgrade to a roller cam setup immediately for no real extra money. So that might make it a bit more something to stomach a bit easier. Now, looking at the LS head, for some odd reason, the LS head uses the exact same cam pattern as the Ford 300. So this means that you do not need a billet camshaft. You can use the stock cam. You can have the stock cam reground. You can get any off-the-shelf cam. This is, again, makes the LS head way more affordable. The downside is if you would like to upgrade a roller, there was no 300 camshaft with a roller camshaft. So you would need to get something billet, which would cost more money. But since you've saved so much money on the head already, it's really not that bad. And you'd probably want to get some sort of custom grind no matter which way you get, because I'm sure the characteristics of the LS head and the Cleveland head are vastly different. So the stock regrind or a off-the-shelf 300 grind probably wouldn't take full advantage of it. Another thing that I think we should talk about is the bore centers. Bore centers is a big one. So now you're gonna have to remember some numbers here, and I'm not great at math. So the Ford 300 bore centers are 4-inch, 0.480 thousandths. Okay. The LS head is 4-inch, 0.400 thousandths. So there's 80 thousandths difference. Now, if you do the head in two pieces like I did and I suggest you do, you will have an overhang of 40 thousandths on cylinders 1, 3, 4, and 6. Have a 40 thousandths overhang on them cylinders, which isn't too bad. And if you look at my videos, you'll see it's not a big deal. However, if you use a Cleveland head and you do it in two pieces, the Cleveland bore spacing is 4.380 thousandths. So it's 100 thousandths difference. So that would mean that you would have 50 thousandths off center on cylinders 1, 3, 4, and 6. Now 10 thousandths is a lot, but the valves are getting closer to the cylinder wall, which you don't want because one is shrouding, and if they're too close, they could hit, right? So that is not ideal. So the Cleveland head would really be more ideal for doing a 3-section or even an individual section per cylinder cut on the head. But that's cutting up a lot of heads. So I would like, as a bonus here, the new Ford 7.3 Godzilla pushrod engines have a bore spacing of 4.45, I believe. You don't quote me on that. But they have a bore spacing that's closer to the Ford 300 engine. So you'd have less of an overhang, and they flow very well. So that there could be an argument made for that being even better than the Cleveland head if you wanted to stick Ford on Ford. But that's a completely other video. I know nothing about that. So we're going to stick to what I do know. It's probably also a custom cam and everything, and them heads probably cost a lot of money too. So, anyway, is there anything else I'd like to talk about? I do not believe so. I think I've hit all my talking points. So if you guys like this video, if it was informative to you, if you want to see more, please hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment telling me what you would like to know more about when it comes to this particular modification for these engines. I'll try to make a video on it. I'll try to gather all the comments up, make one big long video on it, and do an update video in the future. If you didn't like the video, please leave a comment and tell me why. All right, I'd love to know. So that's the video. I had to record this twice, so if you stuck around with me this time, I appreciate it. The first video wasn't good. You can still see the original draft up on Patreon if you want to get the full of me just rambling and spewing stuff out. It's up there to watch. I also apparently need to get different thing for my chair here, so like it looks a little bit better instead of it like popping in and out. I don't particularly like that. Anyway, this is Tall Garage. I hope this was helpful to you guys, and I'll talk to you on the next one.